Hey folks, Carl Kishel here, and welcome to this edition of the Microsoft Cloud News Update, researching the cloud blog so you don't have to. So for this week, we have a handful of announcements to share with you regarding Azure Virtual Networks and the ability to resize that. That's now in public preview. We have a update regarding some DDoS protection attack trends for the first half of the year, 2021. Some updates regarding Azure Migrate and application migration, global disaster recovery updates regarding Azure Site Recovery, and some Teams roadmap updates. With that, let's jump into it. Links to all the updates we'll be covering can be found in the description of this video. So the first update is regarding Azure Virtual Networks and something that's in preview. So if you're familiar with virtual networks in Azure, there's been this long-standing constraint where any address space change is only allowed if the virtual network does not have any existing peerings. So now in preview, this constraint is now lifted, and customers can now freely resize their virtual networks without incurring any downtime. So this is a pretty significant update and a new feature that's currently in preview. Look for this to be released sometime by the end of the year for general availability. Our next update is regarding denial of service attacks on the Azure platform and Azure's ability to protect against that. And this is a trend analysis or report for the first half of the year 2021. So a lot of neat charts in terms of tracking and understanding the number of attacks and where they're coming from and so on. So I'll kind of cover some of the highlights. First chart is pretty interesting in terms of the number of daily DDoS attacks on resources in Azure. So it's really anywhere between 1,000 to 2,000 attacks per day that are captured. And also interesting to note that Azure has been able to mitigate upwards of 251,000 unique attacks for the first half of 2021. This is the global Azure platform. Going down through the list here in terms of attack duration, the longest attack duration is usually between 10 to 20 minutes in length. Looks like the average is around 20 minutes or so in length. Attacks by quarter are also listed here. Attack vectors in terms of the technology that's been used for these attacks. And no surprise here in terms of UDP flooding and TCP flooding being the DDoS attack vector. That's pretty common. The most top attacked regions, United States is number one, followed by Europe and the rest of the world. But definitely the United States is one of the top targets here. 5 top attacked destinations by month. And again, the US and Europe are fairly well represented here. In terms of the source of the attacks, pretty even in terms of coming from China versus the United States and spread out through all the other regions. And this is also, some of the unknowns here. You might be thinking, well, what if it's been spoofed or autonomous system attacks, etc. So this does take into account those facts as well. And last but not least, some of the new attack types that have been observed through this analysis. RDP abuse over UDP port 3389. That seems to be a rising attack vector, as does exploits with TLS and Plex media server abuse as well. So a lot of more details in this report if you're interested. That was pretty interesting to see what's how Azure protects and some of the traffic they see regarding DDoS attacks. Our next update is regarding the acceleration of application modernization with Azure Migrate. And the Azure Migrate tool, if you're not familiar with it, is really an all-encompassing tool. It covers many, many different factors within the Azure platform. And specifically, what this blog post points to is the ability for the Azure Migrate tool to identify app services and applications within your environment Maybe they're running on virtual machines, on premises, or in IaaS. And the next step for digital transformation is converting those applications into containers or more of a platform as a service model. And the Azure Migrate application and tool can help you inventory these apps, but also give you some guidance on how these apps can be migrated into containers. Now generally available, global disaster recovery via Azure Site Recovery or ASR. So ASR is a tool that allows you to replicate various components within Azure. They can be virtual machines, as well as some networking components and storage. And Azure has a long history of ASR being able to replicate within specific data centers, zones, and regions. And with this now announcement regarding global disaster recovery, you can now transcend um, your disaster recovery strategy beyond regions, have a more of a global focus. And our last two updates are regarding Microsoft Teams, and these are roadmap updates. So the first one, the ability to scale Teams live events to 100,000 attendees. So 100,000 attendees um, will now be supported. Target release is September of this year. And you do need to engage the Microsoft Leap team for assistance for producing and delivering this type of live event via Teams. So more information regarding the Leap team will become available once this feature is released next month. And last but not least, another roadmap update regarding Teams, and if you have the calling services enabled, is a spam call notifications. And this will be a feature much like what you see on cell phones today, smartphones, where an incoming call, spam alert, spam risk, etc. This type of a feature will now be apparent within the Microsoft Teams platform with incoming calls, and comparing that uh, originator of the call against the database and providing the end user with a chance to either accept or decline that call based on likelihood of this being spam. So be on the lookout. This should be released sometime this month, August 2021. That concludes this week's edition of the Microsoft Cloud News Update. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, give me a thumbs up. Don't forget to like, subscribe, keep up to date to all the updates we do roughly once a week for the Microsoft Cloud, the updates here. If you have any comments, suggestions, etc., send them out to me via the comment section. I read all the comments. And also reach out to me via LinkedIn or Twitter @CarlFishel. So with that, I wish you well. Thank you so much for watching the video this week, and we will catch you next time. Take care.